Hi, I'm Chas, and I'm here today with my fellow co-founders of Ngwenya Glass, Sibusiso and Kathy. We are based in Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland in Southern Africa. We warmly welcome you into our small, unique contribution to the magical world of glass. We are proud and privileged to be part of the gas community, and today we're going to share with you the history of our amazing little glass company and glass in general in Eswatini. Our name, Ngwenya Glass, comes from the area where we are situated. Ngwenya is the Siswati name for a crocodile, and it gets its name from the mountain range next to us that is shaped like a basking crocodile. At the summit of the mountain is what is believed to be the oldest mine in the world, dating back 48,000 years. Iron ore, rich with red ochre, was mined here. Initially used by many African tribes as cosmetics and in traditional ceremonies like rain dances to end the ever-present droughts that occur in this part of the continent. The Ngwenya mine was mined commercially in the 1960s and 70s, but as it was a small deposit, mining ceased in the mid-1970s. The idea to build a glass factory in this area of Swaziland started in 1975 with a partnership between SIDA, a Swedish aid company, and SEDCO, the small enterprise development company in Swaziland. The closure of the mine being one of the reasons that the glass factory was situated here, in the hope that it would absorb some of the jobs lost due to the closure of the mine. Two other reasons being it is one of the coolest areas in the kingdom, and there is a silica deposit close by. In 1978, the Swedish team of Bo Aspling, Willy Andersson and Ulla Hoogland arrived in Swaziland. Bo at the time was running the glass school at Orrefors, and he was tasked with designing the building and collecting all the machinery and tools needed from closed glass factories in Sweden. He was also tasked with the logistics of shipping everything out to Africa. Willy and Ulla were to train the local glassblowers, and Ulla's wife Marie shared her engraving skills with the new artisans. Bo is now retired in Sweden, Willy is blowing glass in Norway, and Ulla is blowing glass in his studio near Nelson in New Zealand. Glass blowing started in early 1979, using a 250 kg day tank furnace. Although there's a silica deposit near the factory, Bo and his team decided to rather use recycled bottles from the local Coca-Cola bottling plant. Adverts were placed in the local newspaper and on the radio, requesting people to come for an interview and a test around the furnace. Bo was hoping to have about 60 people from which to choose 10 to begin with. On the day, they arrived at work to find over 600 people waiting patiently for the opportunity to get a job. The Swedes were so overwhelmed, and I'm sure you can imagine the mammoth task ahead of them. Sibusiso was one of those 600, and he recalls that day.
It was in 1979, and I have just finished school when I heard that they were going to have interviews here for people who want to work with glass. But at that time, of course, we didn't know what glass blowing was, and we thought they were going to make window pails or car windows. And I came here like everyone just for an interview. But at that moment, I also had applied for college. But I was one of the 600 plus people who came here to try their luck. And there were so many people queuing here trying to get a job or come for the interview. And I was lucky to be one of them, to be chosen to start working here as a trainee.
Sibusiso and a colleague were identified as the two with the most potential to become good glassblowers. They travelled to Sweden for 8 months of further intensive training, and Sibusiso was assigned to master glassblower Jan-Erik Ritzman, who at the time was working at Costa Boda. Jan-Erik and Sibusiso bonded over glassblowing, as well as their mutual love for farming and mechanical machinery. They have maintained a close friendship ever since, and they have a pact: whoever dies with the most mechanical junk wins. We have been honoured to host Jan Erik in Swaziland, where he participated in our first workshop in 2006. Sibusiso takes up this story of his first impressions of travelling abroad and training in Sweden under Jan Erik.
After some months training, of course, I got a letter from the college saying that I can now come to college because I've applied for engineering or construction. And I showed it to Bo Asplin, who was the general manager, and I said, look, I have to go to college. I've applied, and now they've admitted me. And then he told me that, no, that can't happen because we've chosen you to go to Sweden. Oh, so at that time, 20 years old, 19 years old, going overseas was never heard of. So, of course, I had to drop the idea of going to college and decided that I must go to an aeroplane for the first time, which was very exciting. So I went overseas. I went to Sweden. Of course, part of the time was winter. I've never seen snow in my life before. And we had to go train under Jan Erik Risman, one of the well-known glass blowers. And we also felt we were friends with him. And he was of big help with the training.
Swaziland is a landlocked country, surrounded by South Africa on the north, west, and south, and Mozambique on the eastern borders. In the 1970s and 80s, there was no international tourism in this area. This time was the height of apartheid in South Africa, and Mozambique was embroiled in a vicious civil war. Swaziland was this tiny, peaceful oasis where a lot of international diplomats enjoyed danger pay whilst being posted to watch across the borders into South Africa, without being seen to be in that country. Swaziland became a conduit for sanctioned goods from South Africa to make it into the international market. Although there were many expats living in Swaziland, they were not enough to absorb all the glass produced, so neighbouring South Africa had to become a market for the company to be sustainable. However, when the Swedes heard this was happening, they pulled all support. The Swedish team eventually handed the business over to Sedco in 1981, which was the original plan anyway. The new management team really struggled to keep the company afloat, and although they had all the production skills needed, the management was lacking. Sadly, the factory went into liquidation, and the doors eventually closed in 1985. During the next few years, many businessmen, some of whom were in the glass business, were invited to come and see whether they would be interested in restarting the business again. Some were met and shown around by Sibusiso, but they all had the same answer. This was simply not a viable operation. At this time, I was a marine engineer, working my way around the world in the bowels of cargo ships. My parents were working on a farm in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. Our family had recently inherited an expandable 17-foot-long dining room table that has been in our family for over 200 years. For the first time in decades, this old farmhouse had a room large enough to house the table at its full extent. There was a little gift shop in the nearby farming community town that sold the glass animals made in Swaziland. My mother fell in love with them. She bought a few elephants as a gift for a friend, but she never got to give them away. They were placed on the dining table. You can imagine how pathetic they looked on this massive table, so it was decided that the herd of elephants had to grow into the table. For birthdays, Christmas, and any other reason, family and close friends were encouraged to stop at the gift shop until there was a herd of elephants charging down the full length of the table. When the herd had reached only halfway, we were told that the factory had closed, and the unique glass elephants were no more. Kathy, my then girlfriend, who was living in Durban at the time, tracked down the location of the glass factory in Swaziland and confirmed the closure. This was quite a mission, as you can imagine. Remember, it was 1986, long before Google. A while later, I was home on shore leave and suggested to my dad that we should take a trip up to Swaziland to see if we could find some more elephants to complete the herd. It was a 2-day drive, and we found the factory closed and dilapidated. The security guard gave us the contact details of the liquidators, who eventually showed us around the silent and dusty factory. We bought enough elephants to complete our herd, but then decided that we should make an offer on the business. We believed in the products, but had no clue how they were made. But both of us being mechanically minded, we believed we could give it a go. We met with Sibusiso, and these are his words regarding his first impressions of meeting my father and I on that day in early 1987.
After the factory has been closed for almost 2 years, Chas and his father, Richard Mkulu, we call him, and Gogo, his mother, came along to start the factory again. I remember when I first saw them, I just couldn't believe that they were going to survive with it or they were going to make it work, because before they came, there were quite a few businessmen who came here. You know, they came from a farming community. They were farmers before. They were wearing khaki shorts. And I said to myself, no, these guys are not going to make it. But of course, as it is now, it shows that I wasn't telling the truth, or I wasn't sure. But of course, over years, it became successful. So my first impression was wrong.
When we returned to the farm some days later, we found a telegram waiting to tell us that we were the proud owners of a defunct glass factory in Swaziland. Now what? In June 1987, after resigning my life at sea, my parents and I arrived in Swaziland with our meager possessions and our 3 dogs and a cat. Sibusiso was a hard man to pin down. He had created a new life and livelihood for himself in the past 2 years. He was, quite rightly, not keen to take a chance on these enthusiastic new arrivals, with 0 glass-making experience. He did, however, agree to explain what the machinery was used for and put us in touch with some of the previous staff to see if they would be interested in coming back. Sibusiso said he would be willing to train us and any new blowers and staff for a limited time. 3 months was the extent of this commitment to us, for which we were extremely grateful. Together we repaired the existing furnace, but soon realized that this would need a complete rebuild. Sibusiso helped us to get the furnace up to temperature, and as agreed, he started testing and training new enthusiastic applicants. 33 years later, and he has never left. We recognized and knew that there was indeed a market for these unique glass ornamental items and tableware in neighboring South Africa. We organically grew the business, which we self-funded, and learnt a few hard lessons along the way. But as they say, if you're not learning, you're not progressing. We hosted a number of workshops over the years, inviting international and regional glass artists and designers. These workshops were all orchestrated by Dutch glass artist and GAS member Peter Bremers, who has been instrumental in helping us with designs of new products and knowledge of the art glass world over the years. The workshops ran for a week, and our glassblowers learned new techniques from amazing glass artists like Peter, Jan-Erik Ritzman, David Reed, Richard Price, Tim Shaw, Marco Lapalalan, Richard Jolly, Davide Salvadori, James Devereaux, as well as Grant and Erin Garmezy. The transfer of knowledge, however, was not all one way. Some of these international artists also took home something new from their experiences with Sibusiso, James, and their teams. We transformed a large amount of ideas into glass during these workshops. Some of them a little crazy, but some we were able to incorporate into our normal production as new product lines. The weeks were a lot of fun, and many new friendships were formed. We are eternally grateful to Peter for arranging these workshops. Peter continues this story with his experiences at Ngwenya Glass.
The very first time I came to Ngwenya Glass in 2005, I came as a volunteer. My help was requested to create some new product designs, and I was not just impressed by the warm welcome of the Ngwenya people, but very much also by the quality of the glass and produced from recycled bottles and the advanced making skills of Sibusiso, Malanga, James Magagula and their teams. Within a couple of weeks, we produced a number of designs, including a successful range of drinking glasses. But while I was having a blast working with the teams and getting to know Ngwenya and making new friends, I did wonder why there were no local designers and artists that could be more suited to create African glass designs. So when Chef Prettejohns asked me to come again, I suggested a workshop involving other glass artists from abroad as well as artists and designers from the region. And we did just that. Also some students from Tshwane University out of Pretoria joined the ranks and many designs were created. But also some famous artists like Davide Salvatore from Italy and others were jumping to the opportunity to participate in these workshops, show their skills in this little country in southern Africa. All of them were inspiring, but just as much they were inspired and many returned afterwards to the ever-welcoming people of Ngwenya. We actually did 9 of these workshops and word got round. So designers and artists from the southern African region now come to get their ideas produced in glass at Ngwenya. They create limited editions of vases and lamps as well as beautiful tableware. This crocodile is a successful model for sustainability and environmentally friendly glass production. There's no doubt that Ngwenya Glass is showing the way. It's a success story that needs to be heard. And if you visit South Africa, don't miss out on seeing the Ngwenya masters create their products and take some of the best souvenirs home with you in your heart and your suitcase.
The Ngwenya team were always very thankful for the new knowledge that they learned from our international visitors and honoured them with a guard of honour when they arrived and left. Swazis, being a proud and friendly nation of people, give those who work with them a local name. Peter earned the name Vulindlela, which roughly translates to the person who builds bridges across rivers so communities can easily interact with each other. This shows the respect and appreciation our staff have for Peter and a true judgment of his character. Peter's appreciation for art and life is infectious, and we are extremely grateful to him for everything he has done for us at Ngwenya Glass. Early furnaces were fueled with diesel. Gas has never been an option for us in this part of the world. As fuel prices increased, we changed to paraffin, or kerosene as it is known in some parts of the world, as it was cheaper and readily available. We later invested in a centrifugal separator and collected used motor oils from all the motor dealers and mechanics. Passing this through the centrifugal separator removed all the water and heavy metals. We mixed this purified oil 50-50 with the paraffin. It burned well, but we were ever conscious of our carbon emissions and were never comfortable with the fuel, even though we were saving the oil from being dumped into rivers and into the groundwater. Our next step was to change the motor oil to vegetable oils and to try and get KFC and other fast food outlets to allow us to collect their waste oil. At the time, this oil was being collected by a South African company and exported out of the kingdom. After much negotiation, we managed to get the rights to it, and we were soon able to replace the motor oil. Since then, we have managed to push our blend to a 65-35 mix with paraffin. We do struggle with the old oil in winter as it solidifies, but we have procedures in place to minimize these. Some years ago, I read about a company in Cape Town that was converting waste plastic to diesel using a pyrolysis process. This sparked an interest, and I went to investigate. The process looked simple enough, and the product looked amazingly pure. However, when it came to placing an order for the equipment, I was told that it was not available as the company had just signed a massive contract with people in the UAE, and it was not going to be available locally. I was disappointed but later relieved as I found the whole thing was a scam. I did find some pyrolysis oil from another supplier, but the smell was so bad I could only imagine the toxicity of it. With us working close from an open furnace, we would all be dead in a matter of days. I did further research into pyrolysis, and I do believe that there may be some merit in this fuel sometime in the future. Now I don't believe the technology is yet available for our type of business. Recycling bottles was more a convenience-motivated decision rather than an eco-conservation choice when the factory was opened. As time passed and our furnaces got larger and our production increased, we realized that we were making an incredibly positive impact on the environment by turning old, discarded bottles into unique handmade glassware. It was at this time that we realized that we could become a significant company for good, not only in removing rubbish from our landfills, but creating an income for people who were collecting it as well, and in so doing, improving their lives. Our next project with an environmental impact was to collect the rainwater off our roof and use it in our grinding department and our toilets. Our staff complement had grown to over 50, and we were receiving more and more international tourists, all who needed to use the ablutions. We invested in 60,000 litres of storage tanks and linked up our grinding and polishing stations, as well as all ablutions to these tanks. We don't get much rain in winter, but in the rainy summer months, we are able to run the whole time on this harvested rainwater. I heard about a machine made in the UK that used what they called implosion to convert bottles back to sand, and that could then be used for a number of applications where sand is currently used. The claim was that the technology worked like an opera singer who could produce such a high pitch that it would implode a wine glass in the audience. As we were only melting flint glass, there was a large amount of coloured glass that needed to be taken care of. I imported this new technology only to find that it was actually a rotating blade that smashed the glass inside a chamber. It had nothing to do with the sound of the implosion at all. As far as I know, the company no longer exists. Funny that. We have used this machine and since built our own to reduce the coloured bottles back to sand. We sieve it to different sizes and have used the aggregate in most of our building projects as a supplement added to the sand, which generally gets harvested from our rivers. We do not use 100% crushed glass, as some sand is still needed to help with the binding of the cement. The unplastered walls that we have built with these bricks sparkle in the sunlight. We do not have enough building work to use all the coloured glass available in Eswatini, but we have made a small dent in the coloured glass trash dumps. Next, we decided it was time to invest in another green energy project. With the huge improvement of solar PV technology and the improved price point, we installed 550 solar panels on our different roof surfaces, which gives us 92 kilowatts at its peak on a nice sunny day. This is a grid-tie system, so we have no storage batteries. We use the power as we generate it, and it's not enough to run the factory 100%. We have just agreed to add a further 60 kilowatts to this system, which we hope to have in place by the latter part of this year. This will give us 100% of our daytime usage. At present, we are not able to sell back into our national grid, as we do have excess on weekends when we are not running any Anila. Apparently, our utility supplier is going to be allowing this later in the year. Our payback on the first installation was 3.5 years, and the new installation may be quicker if we are able to feed back and get paid for our excess power.
We have always been very mindful of the waste that we create with our packaging. Packaging is a bit of a double-edged sword. We are dealing with a fragile product that has to arrive undamaged, but the amount of packaging needed to ensure this is totally ridiculous. Our heavy-duty outer cartons are sourced from a large packaging company in South Africa that uses a high percentage of recycled board in their boxes. Padding is made up of old newspapers that we collect from all corners of Eswatini. We do have a few products that we really cannot get away from using plastic bubble wrap. This is not ideal. We are always actively looking at ways to improve our packaging, and we hope it won't be too long before we find a good alternative to bubble wrap.
With our ever-expanding production, we were forced to build bigger furnaces. It did not take us long to realize the corrosive action the molten glass had on our furnace blocks in the day tank furnaces of the early days. The lifespan of our furnaces back then was barely 1 year. We thus designed a semi-continuous furnace, which has 2 compartments separated by a central wall with a hole at the bottom, so that the glass could flow through from the melting to the gathering section. We then discovered that our fuel efficiency improved as well, because we held the furnace at a constant temperature all the time, rather than running hotter at night in the day tank to ensure a good melt and extraction of bubbles. Glass quality also improved. As the level of the glass did not fluctuate as much as in the day tank, the furnace life was extended 5 times. We have learnt many hard lessons in furnace building and maintenance, but are pretty proud of our efforts, seeing as we have done it all alone. At present, we are, however, back on a small 400 kg day tank that we built quickly after COVID killed our market overnight. We had to turn off our large 3-ton furnace in order to survive, as we could not afford to run it. We hope to have our Big Mama furnace back in action as business starts to get back to where we were pre-shutdown. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has created a scorecard for companies to measure where they are in the circular economy. We participated in this and came out with an A plus being the highest score. All this without changing any of our normal day-to-day practices. B-Corp also has a measuring tool to determine whether companies are doing the right thing or not. To be certified B-Corp, you must score 85 points or more. Ngwenya Glass scored an impressive 115, again without having to change anything. However, Ngwenya Glass is not officially B-Corp, as we are not able to pay the annual subscription fee at the moment. We have been hit so hard by the pandemic, we decided that we should be spending our cash on keeping our staff employed instead. Around 10 years ago, we became members of the World Fair Trade Organization, again without having to change any of our practices. We are founding members of Swaziland Fair Trade, which was set up under the auspices of WFTO. Our WFTO membership has also lapsed due to non-payment, but again, I see little reason in paying fees to a European organization when the money would be better spent at home. We know that we meet all the criteria and are running our business under these principles and will continue to do so. One of our biggest challenges has always been finding glass colors that are compatible with our soda lime glass. We have used Optil colors for many years with differing results, and the palette has always been rather limited. Over COVID-19, Optil has unfortunately stopped production of any colors, and so we find ourselves colorless. We intend to try to create our own colors, but I'm sure you're all aware that this is not a simple process. If any of you are able to help with this, we would really appreciate all the help we can get. We all know how much energy we use in manufacturing glass, but over the years, we have always looked to ways to improve our environmental impact. I think that we all know what carbon footprint is, but we have penned a term, carbon handprint. Where carbon footprint is the measure of the damage humans are doing, carbon handprint is the measure of what we are doing to mitigate that. We are working on creating some sort of quiz where people and companies can measure their carbon handprint, and we will be giving advice on how the score can be improved. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get to host you in our beautiful part of the world sometime soon. You're all most welcome. If you have never blown a recycled soda lime glass before, come and give it a go.